But when you read the Club of Rome documents, CFR documents, everything is the carbon tax, taxing the carbon cycle of the planet. We're carbon-based life forms. The ocean's full of carbon. The trees, the trees breathe the carbon dioxide and put out oxygen for us. They've done studies, and the Earth is starved right now for carbon dioxide. It's been 14 times higher from the ice core samples. Trees grow faster, live longer, humans are healthier, higher oxygen. We're oxygen starved. And we're on an 11-year sun cycle. That's what mainly controls this, but there's some other things. They know this. They brag. Al Gore owns the two big companies that you'll buy the carbon credits from. George Soros says, I'm having a great controlled crisis. You're making the biggest profits in my life. This is the culmination of my life work. I've done this. Ha, ha, ha. This is funny to them. And Mark Morano has probably got the biggest alternative news site, which is as big as a lot of major newspapers, exposing the complete fraud and the new religion. Now, the elite know it's a fraud, but for the public, they say in their own documents that we've covered here, we're going to give them a new religion of Gaia, then this will be organized by the state, and we'll have a one-child policy. And this is what Hitler was for. Hitler was for controlling the population and a vegetarian and an animal rights guy. And this is what they believe. These are control freaks, Prince Philip, Ted Turner, all of them. So ClimateDepot.com, the Committee for Constructive Tomorrow, a environmentalism think tank. He worked for director of the Republicans on the U.S. Senate Committee for Environment and Public Works, worked for Senator James Inhofe, who we think's one of the better senators up there on these issues. Good thing when this propeller fell off his plane, he didn't die. They sure like to kill a lot of them that way. And he just does so much more. But now we've seen the Republicans flip-flop after Bilderberg 2007, and suddenly a lot of them have gotten behind it. So we're in a lot of trouble here. And people they're calling for climate change denial. If you say it doesn't exist, they say that's like denying the Holocaust. You should be arrested in Europe. They're trying to get us to sign on to the criminal court, so we're under these laws. So fellow heretic, fellow thought criminal, man out there kind of aggregating all this news and information and the tens of thousands of scientists saying that global warming being man-made is a fraud. Mark Morano, a serious thought criminal. While we're still able to talk to him, they're trying to outlaw what we're about to do. Sir, thank you for coming on Thought Criminal.
Thank you, Alex. Happy to be here. Yeah, you mentioned the denier and all that. We have a CBS News reporter, Scott Pelley, who literally has publicly said he will not interview any scientist skeptical of Al Gore or the United Nations view of global warming, because for the same reason, if he was doing a story on the Holocaust, he would not interview any people who denied the Holocaust happened. They have returned this into sacrosanct, and you're right, the late Michael Crichton, the author, was one of the early ones who called this a religion. There's on my site right now, ClimateDepot.com, we have a 7th grade girl in school who won an essay where she says we need a climate exorcism. And she says we're being haunted. I mean, these are the words of religion. These are the words of faith-based thoughts, not science. And if you look at the polling data, the American people are actually growing more skeptical, dramatically skeptical, in the last few years, as the Earth has failed to warm, as more scientists come out, as new studies just make a mockery of what Al Gore has claimed. But what we're finding is young people are still the most firmly and committed believers. And I've spoken at elementary schools. Kids are worried about polar bears and flooding, both of which are completely manufactured scares by the global warming industry. Sea levels, there's no acceleration in sea level, and if one of the scientists said if sea level's rising due to global warming, no one's told sea level.
Well, the ice caps grew by, 30% this year, Arctic and Antarctic.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, when they show a polar bear on the news and say, look, he's drowning, they know polar bears are the greatest land swimmers on Earth. They can swim hundreds of miles. I mean, this is such a scam. I mean, Gore just is laughing all the way to the bank. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, particularly polar bears are at or near record highs, according to U.S. Geological Survey. The only way they're threatened, and they're not even threatened here, there's a computer models. The bottom line is they've survived much warmer periods than that's even being contemplated.
They thrive.
And it's all based on computer models, which Ivy League lead expert in forecasting said the UN climate models violate the basic principles of forecasting. Something like 70 out of 84 principles, it violates 70 of them. These are just, some people have called them Sony PlayStation video games. That's how they get the fear. They have to posit and Obama's energy secretary, Stephen Chu, is the biggest embarrassment on this. He will talk about what he thinks is going to happen in the year 2100 and act as though it's evidence of today. Top Japanese scientists just came out in, I believe, January or February and said that global warming is now akin to astrology. That's the level we've reached here. If you read your horoscope every day, it's written in such a way that it's vaguely worded that pretty much anything happens, you can say your horoscope was right. Well, the same way with global warming. They're now getting away from the phrase global warming. They want to call it global weirding, in the words of Thomas Friedman.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to ask you about next is the New York Times, as you know, it got leaked that one of these PR firms had written up the new pitch for the White House and the Democrats was that we're losing our atmosphere. It's deteriorating. Climate change, stress when it's over cold, that was caused by man. Stress when it's hot. I mean, we've got them red-handed running around fear-mongering, and now that people are waking up to him, Gore's now going, we'll all be dead in 5 years. It's not 20 now. Give me the money. And he publicly owns the trading companies in Chicago and England that the money's going to go into. I mean, how asinine is this?
Oh, he is poised. He's partners and affiliated with groups that have already invested $1 billion in, I think, 40 different companies. He is poised. He went from $1 or $2 million net worth to over $100 million now, according to Bloomberg News, and now he's poised to be the world's first carbon billionaire. But he's not doing it through entrepreneurship. He's doing it through lobbying the government to pass unneeded mandates that are going to make real people suffer.
It's taxes.
Yeah, these are but even beyond taxes, it is a moral question. We have poor Africans in places like Chad who have global warming-inspired bans on charcoal. They can't cook, they can't heat their huts because they're worried about global warming mandates.
Mark, I got to stop you again. Mark, I got to stop you, and I'm going to try to shut up and let you talk. But when I hear you saying all this truth, I got to say this, and then I want you to go over it. I've read the actual UN studies. It's not even our studies. It's their studies. They admit that their global warming cuts of 20% could kill hundreds of millions of people. If they cut it by 50%, like they're saying, billions. They know, and they're eugenicists, and so they brag that they've got to do this to cut the numbers. These are cold-blooded killers, but then they say we're being paid by oil companies. We're stating facts. They're the ones that are now being paid by oil companies as ExxonMobil's gotten on board for the global scam. Now, I'm going to shut up. Go over the numbers of what this will do to the third world.
Well, the third world, I mean, as I said, it is a moral question. We have Thomas Friedman, New York Times columnist, who wrote this recent book. He's been on a book tour. I believe he was paid, I want to say $175,000 to go speak in San Francisco. He is telling India, don't follow us. Don't follow the U.S. model of economic success. The earth can't handle it. You don't need to do it. He's telling a country where 40% of its people don't have access to electricity. This is what they're calling the new form of colonialism. It's white, wealthy Westerners telling poor people of color in the third world that they can't have prosperity and development like we can. In other words, they need to remain in the nasty, brutish, short life with no running water, no electricity, no modern medicine, no defibrillators, no treatments, no modern dentistry, no clean water, no clean air, living in huts made of dung because they're living eco-friendly. I've met what I call environmental missionaries, green missionaries, wealthy white people that come, and in this particular case, it was a young woman from Minnesota who was in Africa telling poor South Africans that they were living more earth-friendly and that the U.S. way of life was total BS, meaning prosperity and running water. Electricity.
And Mark, let me stop you. I've seen all the major studies, their own internal studies. The Royal Commission, 1944 to 49, they decided to have the population boom, to not let the third world develop, and they knew it would increase numbers and actually hurt the environment. The way they're living in squalor actually hurts the environment instead of moving to the industrial system and the new advanced cleaner system. So this is economic warfare, is it not?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, the developing world is poised to have the same miracle that the Western world had in the 20th century, except for unfounded global warming fears. Just to give you a few more examples, white wealthy Westerners in England, a grocery market chain, announced they were going to buy local. Well, this didn't sit well with poor Kenyan farmers whose livelihood depended on food exports to England. That's another example of this. You have across, again, using India, environmentalists have opposed various dams to bring in hydroelectric power because of environmental impacts. And I've seen it down in the Amazon rainforest. I did a documentary in 2000. Wealthy celebrities fly in on carbon-spewing jets, stop some development down there, and then they fly back home to their Bel Air mansion. This is a new form of colonialism. It's a colonialism that keeps poor people poor. I interviewed Dr. Walter Williams. He's a African-American economist, George Mason University. He said that many Westerners want to see the developing world poor because it's almost like going to visit, treating people like they're zoo. There's actually a whole thing called poverty tourism now, where you go and you see people live and you think, oh, isn't that neat, isn't that great? And the bottom line is environmental policy is going to keep them living that way.
That's right. And these control freak communists who work for the big banks, because, again, they don't want a free market either. That's why the ultra-rich always fund the poor to set up socialism, to conduit the money and power to the elites. They are saying they want the same system here. They want to cut the population